Folks, I just have a great story for you this week about a family operation that is innovative, understands how to support rural communities, and better yet, keeps the family coming back for generation after generation. Hey, I'm Shaye and you are listening to the Casual Cattle Conversations podcast. Andrew Bredeweg is my guest this week, and he is going to share how their family farm has evolved over the years, what role technology has played in that, as well as his involvement in a local feeder calf auction barn and internship program, in addition to everything else he has going on. He is really involved in the beef industry from beginning to end and just has a great story that we can all learn from. Remember that you can check out these podcasts on YouTube as well. But with that, let's visit with Andrew. All right, Andrew. Well, thank you for joining me today. I am excited to visit with you and share your conversation with the listeners.
Yeah, looking forward to it. This kind of technology here with this is all new to me, so I'll do the best I can and look forward to maybe saying something interesting.
To kick things off, I know you have a family business, and I'm curious, in your opinion, why is it important to support family businesses in agriculture?
Well, I mean, it's an infinite game versus a finite game. You know, in the cattle business, if I go and buy somebody's feeder calves, then, that's a positive thing for them. They got a nice place to sell their feeder calves. If I buy some feed off the local farmer, that's a good thing for him. You don't necessarily, in the business I'm in, for me to win, somebody else doesn't have to lose. And I think that's a good thing. I think everybody in agriculture pretty much has goals to pass it on to the next generation. It'll be multi-generational. And at some point in time, as these little towns keep kind of hollowing out, there'll be a tough sell to get the next generation to want to stay in a town that's so rural that there's just not a lot of amenities, that everybody's kind of been flushed out. It's just no fun. It's not a business goal for me to look around someday and be the only guy left standing. I enjoy working with other producers. We have a lot of our feed custom made, a lot of our hay custom made. We use a lot of custom work. I like working with those guys. It's kind of fun to have those opportunities, and we try to kind of embrace that, to give back and to make it more available for other producers to stay in the industry or stay in the area.
Awesome. And remind listeners where the area is for you. Where are you located?
I am in southern Indiana, southwestern Indiana. I am about 2 hours north of Evansville, and I'm about 2 hours south of Indianapolis. And I'm about 20 minutes from the Illinois state line. So I'm kind of right there. It's Greene County, Indiana, if you want to look it up.
I know we had the opportunity to chat before we started the recording, but tell us a little bit about your family operation. What does that look like? How many generations strong are you? Just let us hear your story there.
Sure. My grandpa's grandpa, he stepped off the boat the day Abraham Lincoln got shot. So that's kind of when we started. That's a little bit of our history. He had some family that was already living in this area that he kind of came and joined up. Got started as, I would call it more of like a sustenance farm in the beginning. They milked a few cows and had a big garden and sold a little milk in town, a little cream and eggs, just for a little cash money. I would really kind of say my grandpa probably transitioned it more towards a traditional for-business or a for-profit agricultural business. And they milked cows and farmed until the mid-60s, and he kind of was at a transition about going to grade A and all the investment that required, or just getting out of the dairy. And of course he always fed out his steers, his dairy steers, and bought a few to go with him, and farmed quite a bit. So he kind of transitioned out of the dairy and got more into the cattle feeding side of things and farming, and just went from there. My dad, of course, joined the operation. He graduated high school in '76, and Dad and I has always been a little bit heavier into the cattle side. It's always kind of been what we've liked to do. I also feel like we've got a few competitive advantages in that neighborhood, more so than the grain side. And so we still do grain farm a little bit. We grain farm about a little less than 500 acres, but primarily raise cattle. We've got mama cows. We also do a little bit of backgrounding and feed a few cattle out. So into just a little bit of everything as far as the cattle side of things.
You got plenty going on. Do you have kids that are involved or interested in the operation?
I do. I've got a son who's 18, and he's going to graduate high school this spring, and I've also got a daughter that's 16. The son is involved in an internship program, which I think we're going to talk about later. So he gets out of school every day at 11 o'clock and comes to work and works the rest of the afternoon. Him and my daughter both actually own a few cattle with their own money and pay the farm to custom feed the cattle. So they've got some involvement in that as well. And also a few little things. We did a farmer's market in town for several years. They raised the cattle, paid the farm to custom feed them, paid the butcher bill, and then got to sell the meat at the farmer's market. And that was good. That was a learning opportunity. I don't know that it was, hugely profitable, but both kids were able to buy their starter vehicles with the money. And they met a lot of people in the community and learned some public speaking and kind of got out of their comfort zone a little bit. So
awesome. So I'm curious, because the operation has been in your family for a long time, even though it's kind of shifted, like you said, it started out like a lot of operations did as just a self-sustaining farm and has transitioned into more of a business model. How would you say your dad prepared you to be a business owner on the operation?
I think my dad's done a good job of just letting me be my own thing. And I know a lot of people have a lot of problems with their dads or working multi-generational. Sometimes that's a point of friction. It's absolutely not been in my case. My dad's as good a guy. He's easygoing. I always laugh and say he wouldn't get excited if his pants were on fire. I've literally seen it happen. He's just real laid back, easy to get along with, and just kind of felt like as I proved that I could handle some things, I feel like I got a little more put towards me. And it's just been that ongoing process. It's still kind of going on. They still pay all the bills. Their house is the mailing address for the farm. They take care of the payroll for some of the guys. But I would be more into like the record keeping and things of that nature. Yeah, just as I've got older and he's gotten older, it just shifted more to me and more to me. And a lot of credit to him. He's been very willing to give up control. He's not wrapped up with his ego or anything like that. So, yeah, kudos to him, I would say.
Have you tried to implement some of that with your own kids as well? Or how are you preparing them?
It's a work in progress. My son played high school football and really enjoyed that. They had a couple of deep playoff runs, so that kind of went late into the fall. So, and I've really not pushed on him real super hard. I just kind of let him be a kid and let him enjoy his senior year. He also golfs, so I don't think we're going to get a whole lot out of him in the spring either. It's just a little early to make that call with him. Like I say, he's 18, he's finishing up high school. Same way with my dad, as he kind of proves his ability, he'll get a little more handed on his plate until he kind of proves it. He's looking about starting a local agricultural school down in Vincennes, Indiana next year. So we'll kind of see how that goes too. That's kind of an unknown wild card a little bit, so we'll see how that plays out.
Okay. One topic that I always find interesting for generational operations is adaptation of technology. And how would you say that has changed? What's been every generation's mindset around technology for your family?
Well, when I first read that question you sent me, I thought, man, I'm the wrong guy to be talking about technology. But then the more I got to thinking about it, I suppose we are probably kind of early adopters. My grandpa was big into the harvest store systems, if anybody's familiar with those, the big blue upright silos. He was pretty deep into that in the 60s, one of the first guys to kind of put that system. And that really allowed him to, when everybody else was feeding cattle with a pitchfork and maybe even a team of horses, maybe that would be a little bit of a stretch, but he was able to feed a lot more cattle in a lot shorter time, which freed him up to be able to farm a little bit more or run a little more cattle. So that was an early adoption. Another thing, is when I think of technology, the first thought that kind of pops in my mind is anything with a screen. And I am not good with that. But then we do quite a bit of rotational grazing, especially on the cow-calf side. That, to me, is a technology that, maybe some people don't think of that as a technology, but to me it is. And then we were some of the first people in our area to start feeding cattle with a TMR mixer and drive along bunks. I know that sounds pretty basic for a lot of your listeners, but it doesn't happen a lot around here, and still not a lot. It's a lot of cattle fed in hay rings out on a clay hillside in the mud. I kind of feel like we were pretty early to kind of see that was the way to go. We could feed a lot of cattle with a lot less labor, a lot less machinery cost, a lot less depreciation. So we're pretty early to adopt that. I know we've talked a little bit about the performance beef app. That's been pretty big. I kind of saw early on, just through some advertising that they had and stuff, how valuable that was going to be, and a few things that could open up on the custom feeding side. So I was pretty quick to jump on that, and I wouldn't be without that technology. Yeah, I think that there's a fine line. You can't jump on every single thing that comes across, or, a person would go broke pretty quickly. But on the other hand, if I don't have a lot of used horse implement dealerships in my county, so, At some point in time, some agricultural folks have adapted technology and kind of moved on, and that's what's took their operation to the next generation. I guess we're a little more early adopters than maybe I think once I really kind of got to thinking about that question.
What do you think makes you early adopters in your area for some of this technology? Is it a specific mindset, or do you want to share what questions you maybe think through before you adopt a new technology? I'm just curious. I really found it interesting what you shared about even how your grandfather was an early adopter and how that's just been passed down.
Yeah, I don't know that my goal is to be super competitive with the next guy, but if we see something that's going to give us a competitive advantage or make us be able to do something either at more scale with the same amount of labor or cheaper or maybe even more organized than our peers, then I think that's something that, I'll look at pretty quick. Also is, while I like to work with cattle, I like to stand around in cow manure, I like to build fence, I like to put up hay and all that. At the end of the day, it's a business. And if something makes sense money-wise, then I think we'll adopt it pretty quickly. If something is maybe, there's some things that kind of could be looked at more of on the bragging rights side, or maybe that'd be nice, but it's not necessary. Like we don't have guidance on any of our tractors for the farming. For the amount of acres that we farm, we're still turning the steering wheel and looking at marker rows on our planter. So in that regard, I'm sure there's plenty of good with that technology, but for us, the amount of acres we farm, it's just not something that we kind of feel like it was a little bit more of a creature comfort, and I suppose we're a little slower on those. But yeah, I don't know, just kind of a mindset, something that I can see taking us to the next generation, something to make it either nicer or able to scale a little bit more. We'll go pretty quickly. If it's something that's like creature comfort or something that would be nice, we might be a little more hesitant.
Now, on the performance beef side, what have you really enjoyed about implementing that technology onto your operation?
Just the simplicity. It jumps up on a screen. There's a box right there that says exactly what to feed and how much to feed, and it's recorded accurately every single day. We do a tiny bit of custom feeding, maybe, 15, 20% of our cattle might be owned by other folks other than us. I absolutely would not do that without performance beef. I mean, it's right, it's correct, it's easy to send out billing, and it's just, I did the whole thing where I had spreadsheets and we were writing every day on a clipboard, and then it rains, or, the paper gets wet, or it blows around on a truck, or if I'm being truthful, they sit on my desk for 3 months, and then some cattle left and some cattle were added, and it's just a mess, and it never gets really done right. And then what I didn't like about that is, so you're sitting there on the bleachers at a sale barn kind of wondering what to bid on a set of cattle, and you don't have accurate numbers you're working with. You're saying, well, I think cost of gains running me around 80 cents. Well, is it 80? Is it a dollar? Is it 50? I don't know. It's my best guess. I can write in what I think we're feeding, but is that really what we're feeding? And I wouldn't be without it. It's a heck of a tool, and just to know that everything's there and everything's correct is just worth its weight in gold.
All right. Well, I know that's a shared benefit that a lot of people enjoy, producers who use performance beef, whether that's people I know personally or other guests I've had on the show. So I appreciate you taking time to share that, because it really sounds like it's making a big difference for family operations like yourself.
I get teased about it a little bit from family and stuff that I'm evangelical about it, but it's a game changer. It's a big deal. And if you have trouble with an iPad or something, you can run it off your phone. So we've got a guy that does most of our feeding for us. Our actual big feeding location is not here at our home. It's in the next town over, about 5 miles. And he feeds every day down there. And like I said, if he's unable to, I can jump in the tractor, and it's all right there. It's just easy to do. I'm feeding exactly what he was feeding, and he's feeding exactly what I typed in to feed, and I'm typing in what our nutritionist is typed to us. So it's simple. Our performance on the cattle has really shown when we started using it, because what we thought we were doing wasn't what we were doing, and we weren't being as accurate as we thought, and it's more than paid for itself.
Well, and you said you're not a technology person, but you just said it's pretty easy, so it must be.
Well, that's the biggest thing. I was concerned about that. The gentleman that feeds for us, he's probably 15 years older than me. He's no spring chicken. He's still a flip-phone guy, and that was my biggest thing. I was like, man, I don't know if he's going to be able to do this. I don't know if I can train him to do this. Yeah, you plug it in and 2 buttons, it's go. It's not difficult at all. My dad kind of refuses to use it. And I was like, just seriously, I was like, if I get sick or something happens, he gets sick, I was like, you need to be able to use this in an emergency. Showed it to him, And I mean, he had never saw it before, and in 5 minutes, he's like, yeah, I could probably do that. So it's as simple as you can absolutely believe.
Awesome. Now, Andrew, one part of your story that we haven't touched on yet is the sale barn. Can you talk about what that is and why you got started with that?
Sure. Yeah, I became the manager 2 years ago. It's a White River Valley Cattlemen's Association. It's a co-op structure, sale barn. It's in the next town over in Worthington, Indiana. And they got started in the late 50s, early 60s, kind of a bunch of local producers pooled together and started that as a way to sell their cattle. I've had a few managers over the years. The last guy we had was there for 20 plus years, did an amazing job. He's a good friend of mine. He still works up there. He just wanted to kind of slow down a little bit. He was starting to have the grandkids and multiple grandkids and had a few other things going on and wanted to come up and still work and everything, but didn't necessarily want a lot of the day-to-day stuff. I'd worked there since I was 14 years old in FFA, and me and another fellow was kind of doing a lot of the work in the back as far as the receiving cattle and the processing and sorting and stuff. So I agreed that I'd step up and be a manager position. It's overall been positive. I felt like I kind of, with having been in the business for a long time too, I had some connections with some sellers and some feeder cattle people, so it made sense for me to be the guy to step up and do that. Now, that's not a weekly sale. We are, with our cattle numbers in this area and everything, we have 2 sales in the spring and 4 in the fall. So I don't want to misrepresent that I'm slaving away at an 80 at that thing. It's pretty busy when we have sales, but there's also multiple times in a month where we're not busy, and that's also something that kind of fits in is we get slow with our guys around the farm this time of year, and which is February. I don't know when people are listening to this. And then we also get slow again from when the crops are laid by in mid-July to mid-August before harvest ramps up. So that kind of correlates nicely. If there's some bigger repair jobs, we can go up there with our guys, and I can kind of keep them busy up at the sale barn. It smooths out our labor a little bit, and then I can bill that labor to the sale barn. It gets them off my books a little bit, and the guys still get their hours, and so that kind of works out nicely too. I had that available, which a lot of guys didn't, so I saw that as a nice opportunity too to kind of smooth out our labor dips.
What do you enjoy most about being a part of the beef industry from beginning to end like this?
I think it's one of the healthiest businesses in agriculture. I think it has the lowest barrier to entry, even as high as feeder cattle are. A young person can string some barbed wire or hot wire around a few acres and go pick up some mismatched calves somewhere, or maybe buy an orphan calf off of the neighbor producer, and you can get in this business pretty easily. I don't know that you can say that about some of the other grain farming. Obviously has its challenge, especially if you're going to scale. I really enjoy that. And like I said, I enjoy the aspect of the beef side, like I mentioned earlier. It's not for us to prosper and us to win. Somebody else doesn't have to lose. Now, we've rented some pasture and stuff, or maybe some other folks would have liked to have had that pasture. But by and large, we don't rent a ton of pasture. Like I said, it's just kind of nice. There's a little bit more of a team aspect, and maybe that's just in this area. I know I've read some stuff where it's maybe not like that in a little more competitive places, but here it's a little bit more of a team atmosphere as we're kind of team cows around here. And some of that runs through the sale barn too, that's another thing. We buy a certain amount of cattle from the farm, what we call country cattle, and if you don't think my bid's strong enough, I'll say, hey, bring them up to the sale barn. We'll see exactly what they bring. And again, it's heads I win, tails I don't lose in that scenario. Yeah, I just like it. I like that. Like I said, it's kind of, maybe I don't like that quite as well on the grain farming side of it. It's just so much more competitive, and it seems like guys are kind of rooting against each other. And if I go belly up, then that's some ground that they can pick up and rent and increase their operation. So there's kind of this underlying thing of where they're kind of rooting against you. And I don't know, I'm just not as into that. So I'd like that as far as agriculture, but cattle specifically.
Awesome. Well, I think it's a great industry to be in as well. Now, you mentioned earlier in the conversation when we were talking about your family and your son's involvement, you mentioned he was a part of an internship program, and he gets off school at, what'd you say, 11, and he gets to come work every day. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. Our school started that a few years ago. I think it's awesome. And it's not just me or agriculture. They've placed students in, we've got a local hospital, a local rural hospital. They've placed students there. A good friend of mine owns an insurance agency in town. They've placed students with him, and him specifically, the student that he has just loves it and can't wait to graduate. He's going to get his insurance license and actually join him in the business. It's just been great, I think, not just for me, for all the businesses involved. And, some kids have got placed in a business and be like, okay, I don't want to do that. And they figured that out at 17 and 18 because it's open to juniors and seniors. Instead of going to school for 4 years with something, getting in something, then realize they're on the wrong path. They can figure it out pretty quick with a little less barrier to entry. But it's just made this seamless transition in our little community from students that are in high school just joining some of these businesses. They've already got a leg up. They already halfway understand what's going on. And they come right back into the community. So we're kind of developing on the school side. Then they get plugged right back into the business side. And you kind of keep your smart people at home, if you know what I mean. So it's a good program. I really support it. I think my son, he's the one doing it now. I only take him one, so that's about all we can keep busy. I think he's our fourth student, and it's been good. There's been some kids that's kind of like, I'm ready for this semester to wrap up, send him on down the road. But by and large, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's a good thing.
Was that the school's idea to start that, or did area businesses and people kind of come together and say, hey, we think this would be a good opportunity, we would be interested in taking on kids? What did that look like?
I can't answer that for sure. I'm not sure how they came to that. I wasn't really involved with the starting of it. I just had a good friend of mine's son was interested in doing it, and he contacted me and wanted to know if I'd be interested in hosting him. And I said, do I got to pay you? And he's like, well, it kind of depends. And I was like, how much work is it? It's very little work. I got to fill out an evaluation form at the end of every grading period. But yeah, I think I don't know how the school came up with that, but I don't know if they've kind of copied that from other places. But if somebody's listening to this, it's on a rural school board or something like that, it's been great. Like I said, it's been really, really good to kind of get some kids placed, get some kids kind of rolling down the path, career path, and coming right back into your community. You don't have that brain drain they speak about. You can get some of these kids right plugged in to a business and going.
Have any of those kids that you've worked with, have they become full-time employees or part-time employees for you later on?
One of the kids, he actually really liked it, and he went to college for a little bit and realized that wasn't for him and took on an opportunity, went to a ranch in Montana and stayed out there through the winter and calved out. So they had 450 mama cows out there, and he stayed out there and calved out those mama cows. And when he got done, I think he was ready to come back home. I think there may have been a girlfriend in that story too, but he came back home and is actually back to work for us right now, but I think he's got his application in a few other places. So we're glad to have him back and keep him busy. And I think he's going to kind of look for something else eventually, but he's left and then came back. So he's full-time at the moment, but like I said, I think he's kind of shopping around for something else.
So one theme that I've gathered from your story is that your family, your business is very invested in not only the generations in your family, but those within the whole community. Do you feel your whole community is very supportive of rural businesses, trying to bring people back to the area, or do you feel like you're outliers in that sense?
No, I think we have a very strong community involvement that revolves around our school in this town. Now, as far as agriculture, like I mentioned before, this is not a huge agriculture area. Now, that to be said, people aren't not supportive of agriculture. They support agriculture as much as they do the next business on Main Street or whatever, what have you. I think there is a culture in my town specifically about we want our best and brightest to stay here. We want better things in this town, and to get better things, we need young people to bring these ideas into our community. We need young people to run these things in our community. There's not an attitude of shoving kids out or you need to leave to make it. It's more of an attitude of if you want it, start it, do it. I'll be glad for you to support you. And like I said, high school sports gets a bad rap. Well, I coached football for 18 years, 12 at the junior high level and 6 at the varsity level. So I had a front row seat to a lot of that. And, we preached it. We talked about it. Said, you guys are going to learn lessons right here on the football field about teamwork and who's your buddy and who's your brother, who you can count on. And then when you graduate, you're going to start and you're going to do this in our town. Because I want a doctor in town that I can go to that played for us. I want a shopkeeper I can go and do this here. I want a mechanic in town and so on and so forth. And say, this team doesn't break up. This team stays together. We're just going to move to different roles.
All right. Well, if there is one thing you want listeners to take away from this conversation today. What do you want that to be?
Yeah, I would definitely encourage to get some younger people around you, maybe just, kind of look for opportunities. I'd rather be in a situation is, okay, we've got these people around, these young people full of energy, and most of them are kind of smart, not all of them. That my guys will listen to this and get a kick out of that. But what do we do, and how do we add more? How do we keep these guys busy? How do we grow instead of how do we contract? I really don't like kind of some of the stuff in ag and ag media of as far as just things that just reduce labor. And yes, that is a thing, but I think you've got to be careful tracing that rabbit too far, as you can look around one day and realize you're alone and you're an old man. And that's definitely not what we want. We want more of a sense of community, everybody kind of working together on the team. And for me personally, it's just so much more enjoyable.
All right. Well, Andrew, thank you for taking the time to visit with me today and share your story. For those listening, if you want more information about performance beef, there will be a link in the description as well as in the show notes if you want to go take a look at that and learn more. Remember, the best way to support this podcast and all your other favorite podcasts is to leave a rating or review, and better yet, share it with a friend who's going to find it valuable. But with that, happy ranching, folks.